Hi everyone, Roy here. Going to talk about horror mayhem. So I did a video before of the first bunch of reads I did for this, which is a great booktube event for the month of May. Reading horror. It was devised by the Bookish Bryants. I'm going to list the co-hosts down below. And the theme this year is Decades of Dread. So the idea is to read shorter works and maybe try and look at different decades in which horror fiction appeared, which, as I've discovered, is lots and lots. So in my first attempt, with a couple of earlier ones, I've basically read the first half of the 20th century up to the 1950s. That was fun. So now let's look at 1960s to the 2020s decade we're in. So the hod of excellence has been overtaken with horror for the moment. I've made... That's the kind of thing. So Jennie's here. She's a lot more into the spirit of it than I am, despite not having read any of the books. Oh, things are falling over now. I've got poltergeists, I've got sound effects. So, I made no notes, so I'm just going to extemporise, which, to be honest, is mostly what I do anyway. I make the notes for security reasons and then don't really read them. So, looking for the 1960s led me to Spirit of Place, and Other Strange Tales, the complete short stories of Elizabeth Walter, edited with an introduction by Dave Brzeski. So this book I bought from Dave himself at the Fantasy Con last year, yeah, I have read some Elizabeth Walter stories. She isn't really in my mind as somebody I would sort of seek out necessarily. Well, I should have been, because the stories in this book are excellent. I'm pretty sure I have read one of her more famous ones, The Sin Eater, but for this I looked at a story called The Island of Regrets. This was originally in a collection of hers in 1965 called Snowfall and Other Chilling Events. So, and it was also in the 7th Pan Book of Horror Stories, 1966. So I think I'm on pretty safe ground to say this is a story in the 60s. And it's really, really good. It's atmospheric, it's got a mounting sense of dread. So there's a couple who go to a small hotel, actually in France, a modest hostelry, as it says in the first line, with excellent cuisine. And so it's a man and his fiancée, and he's a guy who's had a breakdown, and she's very impetuous and has a lot of sort of drive, and is kind of in charge of things, I suppose. So they're in this hotel, and one thing that they've spotted is a little island off the coast, which looks idyllic. When they ask about it, they say, "Oh, no, nobody goes there." We call it the Island of Regrets. If people do go there, there's a curse. If you bring anything back from the island, you will die. So there's all these reasons not to go there. These other signs of supernatural problems, like a child has died recently from going there, and the locals put rowan branches on the grave to sort of ward off evil. So lots of reasons not to go to the island. But do they not go? They do not go. So there's the sort of what actually is going on this island, and how's it going to play out, and how does it relate to the the situation with the characters. I think then there's another thing, which is the idea that if you make a wish there, you will get your wish, but not in the way you want. So
that old card.
Yeah. So it's a pretty action-packed, actually. It's not, that idea would lend itself quite well to a very much a sort of quiet horror, subtle, what really happened kind of story. It's not that kind of story. It's a, it's quite a sort of scare fest, if you like. So, really enjoyed this from The Spirited Place, published by Shadow Publishing. Lots more to dig into, so that was good. Already, I'm benefiting from Horror Mayhem by discovering things I hadn't really been getting around to reading. So, on to the 1970s, where Year's Best Horror Stories was my friend in this. So this is a Sphere collection edited by Richard Davis. Very, very 70s cover. So you've got a painting that's been kind of ripped open and for some reason has lumps of flesh and organs emerging from it, which are being eaten by rats. You just... God. Yeah, how fantastic is that?
Don't bring that sort of thing in the house.
Well, I'm not going to have it blown up and turned into wallpaper, am I?
Blow it up.
Anyway, we're back in the world of small hotels, which I suppose do make a good setting for horror stories, because by definition people are out of their normal sort of world, which is already a little bit anxiety creating, and let's face it, they can be a bit scary. Not so much talking about your sort of chain hotels, although maybe there's a different kind of fearful undercurrent to those kind of places.
I've felt fear in Premier Inns.
You have felt fear in Premier Inns.
I've felt fear in Premier Inns.
Ah.
Fear of those stench dispensers that they have in posh corridors.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the
emanations.
Yes, imagine if you're kind of allergic to perfume, having automatic aerosol sprays of perfume in corridors that just go off all the time.
Yeah.
In the still watches of the night, you can hear them hissing, spreading their poison. Anyway, none of that happens in this story, called The Long-Term Residence by Kit Pedlar, who, as I understand it, was a scientist, and characters in this are scientists. So it's a sort of arrive at the hotel place, and it seems pretty pleasant and welcoming, but there's obviously weird stuff going on. In this case, relating to biochemistry. So, yeah, that's right. The guy's heading for a conference and stuff like that. Does he reach that conference? Perhaps not. Yeah, this was a nice little shivery kind of thing, and obviously the guy's using his actual knowledge of a kind of a setting, human activity, to give some realism to it. Nice little collection too. You got Robert Aikman, Basil Copper, Ramsey Campbell, Brian Lumley, and Kit Pedlar. So there was that. Moving on to the 80s. And now we have, again from the Dave Brzeski FantasyCon personal shopper experience, The Angry Dead, Rosemary Pardoe. So it was a special edition from Occult Detective magazine, and it's a complete set of Rosemary Pardoe's stories, with a character. I think they're all going to have a character. Certainly some have her serial character, who is a church restorer, which is a fantastic way of having somebody experiencing a lot of Jamesian horror. Okay, so Rosemary Pardoe, super respected editor, anthologist, and also author, and particularly in the world of M.R. James. So she edited Ghosts and Scholars, a M.R. James themed publication where you can have more stories, very, very high bar of quality in that sort of style. So I read a few of those, and I really want to press on and read them all. The Gravedigger and Death. South Tilford on the Essex Marches is one of the most atmospheric places in the country. And the next one, Holdfast. Yeah, so ecclesiastical setting, ancient horrors and dooms coming to light, a particular kind of fairly subtle but nevertheless affecting kind of horrific sort of manifestation. So it's good to have all these in one place as well, because I mean I gather the stories were, you know, originally a bit spread around, not necessarily under her own name. So hooray, Rosemary Pardoe. And you'll be able to get that from all the usual outlets, Cathaven Press. Right then, so 90s. So the early 90s was a time when I was actually reading quite a lot of horror, largely fueled by Fear magazine, that was a mainstream publication that was covering stories and films and all sorts. And the giant book of Best New Horror contains lots and lots of 90s stuff. And I don't know, because it was my period, I actually think I might have read the whole thing back then, like half a lifetime ago, not remembered it. Certainly names to conjure with from that period: Brian Lumley, Stephen Gallagher, Peter Straub, Ian Watson, Michael Marshall Smith, Thomas Ligotti, Last Feast of Harlequin, well, I've definitely read that. K.W. Jeter, D.F. Lewis, Nicholas Royal, Elizabeth Hand, and on and on. So as it says, it is a giant book of horror, and pretty good collection to get actually, because it's got, they're all in this. Gene Wolfe's in it, Graham Wilson's in it, Kim Newman's in it. But I read, a bit spoilt for choice, but I thought I'd read what Karl Edward Wagner had done. He's a writer I know mainly from his sword and sorcery work with his character Cain, the eternal swordsman. His story Cedar Lane is really, really effective. It starts off being a story where a person has dreams of going back to their childhood home. Well, okay, but every time they wake up, it's like they're the same person, but they're in a completely different life. So somehow there's all these multiple lives, and how's that come about, and how does that fit in with the place, and did they do something terrible? You know, what's so it's like building up to the revelation of what it's all about, but immaculately written and quite moving as well. So the 90s I have notched onto my my reading stick. 2000s, Dracula in London came out in 2000, and I've already talked about this on my London video, so I'll just say, collection edited by P.N. Elrod, Dracula in London. It does exactly what it says on the tin, or this rather splendidly illustrated cover. So in Bram Stoker's novel, there's a period of time, quite a lot of the novel, Dracula is indeed in London. What's he getting up to? And you get all sorts of stories in all kinds of different styles, from kind of comedy to sort of magical realism to SF, and obviously horror. exploring that from various angles. So it's a bit of an exploded diagram of a little part of the Dracula mythos. Yeah, pretty good collection if you can get hold of it. Like I said, from 2000, so there's another decade gone. See, all of these decades are decades I've been alive. All the ones before are decades when I wasn't alive. Does that make a difference? Don't know really. Well, I say sort of, yes, I read some things, you know, like when they came out, which is not true of the sort of 1860s or whatever. Right, 2010s. Elizabeth Hand I mentioned already. This book, Wylding Hall, it was originally, I think, 2015, 2014, something like that. It's been reissued in 2024 by PS Publishing. This is another thing I picked up at FantasyCon from PS Publishing's own stall. Now, I don't normally bother about fancy editions. Is that the postman? I don't normally bother about fancy editions, folio society, that kind of thing, signed first editions, sprayed edges. These mean little to me. You know, my idea of a great edition of a book is probably some battered paperback covered in writing. But there's an exception to every rule, and I was really drawn to this as like a beautiful, beautifully produced object. Gareth, Book, Songs and Other Magic, was talking about the physicality of books on his channel, and yeah, that is a thing. It's part of the whole experience of reading, part of the identity of it. So it's in a slipcase. Here's where I drop it on the floor and ruin it. With a dust jacket, with a lovely printed cover with a wren on it, and nice end papers and great typesetting. It's even got a signature in it of Elizabeth Hand, in her own hand. So, lovely book. As for a story, holy moly, this is absolutely excellent. People probably know, a lot of people know this. I think it won a bunch of awards and stuff, but really, really compelling. I mean, this is a novella. You know, a lot of what else I've read is like short stories. This is, let's see, about 180, 130 pages long, so it's not huge, but plenty of time to get immersed in the world of the story. And it relates to music. Now, I've had my problems with music. I talked about this a bit when I did the Desert Island Books thing on Sean D. Stanfast's channel. In recent times I've kind of been unable to listen to it really. This bizarrely might be part of my way back in. Anyway, it's set in the realms of folk rock in the, I guess, early 70s. So imagine a band, imagine if Fairport Convention had Nick Drake as the singer. You'll get an idea of the kind of thing they're talking about. And also a thing that happened, you know, that did happen quite a lot in real life. This band, they produced an album and they're looking for their second album. It's, you know, it's got to be really good. They've had some problems in their sort of life of, you know, somebody's died, but so they need to recover from that, make a cracking second album. So their manager hires a stately home, a remote, tumble down stately home for them to go and be sequestered for the summer to produce this record. And in many ways it's idyllic. It's halcyon days. It's actually a really good explanation in the text of how the term halcyon days came about. But there's weird things happen. Things to do with the building and things to do with a person appearing. So you've got a bit of a Shirley Jackson vibe, a bit of an M.R. James vibe, in the style of a rockumentary or one, because the various band members and associates are doing first-person reminiscences, turn and turn about. So that's a really readable format. It's a very original idea, and the mixture of the beauty of that, you know, anyone who's ever peered at an album cover and looked for minor details of sort of stuff that had happened in what just looks like this amazing world of like the band and the moment they were creating that work. So I'm sure somebody said this before, not just folk horror, folk rock horror. So Wylding Hall, love that and love the book.
Monkey.
So I've only really got the 2020s left. Hey, that's our decade. And I ended up going back to The Dead of Summer. So an anthology came out this year, edited by Johnny Mains. It's a British Library book. And I've got a blind spot for what these are called. So it's not Tales of the Weird. They're called something like the Glittering Horrors or something like that. Only better.
Does it not say in the book?
Well, it doesn't. I don't think it does. I don't know. I just buy them.
Horrors.
The Glittering Horrors. The
That
glistering.
would be good if it was
The Glistering Uncanny. Anyway,
Valley of Sparkle.
this was where I found my earliest story I'd read so far. That was actually from 1829. So it seems fitting to come to full circle back to that and to read Heaven on Earth by Jenn Ashworth. First published as Midsummer Eve in Midsummer Eve, edited by Steve Shaw, Black Shuck Books 2020. So we are into this decade. So Jenn Ashworth, short story, another absolute banger. Really, really loved this. Very unsettling, and I guess we're looking at the kind of literary end of things a little bit as well. You know, it's got big stuff in it. So, and we're back in a hotel. What is it with hotels? This time, it's an idyllic, super luxury, everything included hotel down in the sort of tropics somewhere. And the guy we're mainly following, he's Terry. He's a bit of an idiot, really. He calls all the staff John because he can't remember any names. So he doesn't need to distinguish between them. They're just there to serve his needs. He's wandering about this hotel, been to the swimming pool. No one seems to be around, and in a way, that's all that happens. Except things circle around and there are odd jumps and things that are like, well, that can't really be right. And you pick up that there's some sort of world problem to do with basically an apocalypse, to do with a sort of pandemic of some kind, probably. Terry doesn't care about those details. These are just the sort of things that happen, and the embassy will sort it out. So there's like waiting for information from the embassy and assuming that the British government are going to pay for this extended stay that was a honeymoon. And then his wife, where's she? Well, is she up in a room with a migraine? That's what he seems to be saying. Never seems to quite get back to the room. It sort of resets to back to the swimming pool. How long have I been lying here? Now, in terms of plot, I think there's lots. It's not actually that jaw-dropping like what's happened. What does make it really great as a story is partly the quality of the writing. And it's not just this guy Terry. He's an idiot getting his comeuppance, because it's like a whole way of life has disappeared, you know, a whole kind of consume everything, everything should be easy if you pay for it. It's all seems to have have gone. It's only Terry that doesn't realise it. So that's what I sort of meant by the big stuff. I guess it's kind of a it's a little bit of a tale for our times. It's sort of the part of the horror is what's happening that you don't see on the world stage, as well as what's actually happened to the characters and how you end up with a hotel with apparently no people in it, and the continual. Well, I won't say any more. Jenn Ashworth, really good, and this collection seems great as well. Dead of Summer, Strange Tales, May even Midsummer. So I've got up to date. Will that be all for Horror Mayhem? Maybe not, because having read an 1820s story in that collection, and then, because of another project, reading Spores of Doom.
Spores of Doom.
I found I'd read a story from the 1830s. I thought I seem to be working my way through the 1800s. I can probably join things up. That could happen, in which case I'll be back with an 1800s special. Otherwise, stay out of them scary hotels, and I'll be back soon with something else.